The garden in the desert. Elias staggered forward, his feet dragging through the burning sands, his throat parched and his heart heavy. He was a wanderer, alone in the vast expanse of the desert, weighed down by memories of mistakes he couldn't erase. In the silent desolation, he felt trapped, not just by the endless dunes but by something deeper, a cycle of sins he couldn't seem to break. Once, Elias had been a man filled with ambition and confidence. He had sought success, wealth, and influence, convincing himself that these things would bring him fulfillment. But with each achievement, he felt an emptiness that grew stronger. Slowly, his life began to unravel. His pursuit of power had led him to compromise his values, to use others for his gain, and to overlook those in need. Anger and pride had woven their way into his heart, driving him to put himself above everyone else. And when things began to fall apart, he clung to destructive habits that left him feeling worse than before. Memories of that night, the night he truly grasped his own hopelessness, resurfaced like an unhealed wound. He could still see his wife, Miriam, standing in the doorway, her eyes dulled with exhaustion, her face streaked with tears. She looked at him, not in anger, but with a quiet sorrow that made him feel as though he had broken something beyond repair. "Elias," she'd said, her voice a fragile thread between anger and sorrow, "you've promised so many times. You say you'll change, that you'll stop disappointing us. But I can't keep hoping for a man who doesn't want to be saved." He had tried to respond, to justify himself, but his words stumbled. "Miriam, I'm trying. I just need more time. I'll fix this, I swear." Miriam shook her head, a flicker of sadness passing over her face. "Elias, it's not about time. It's about your heart. You're so full of pride, so wrapped up in yourself, that you don't even see us anymore. You don't see me, or the children, or the man you're becoming." Her words struck deeper than any blade. But even then, he hadn't listened. Instead, he raised his voice, the familiar anger surfacing, desperate to deflect his own guilt. "I work hard for this family. Everything I've done, I did for you and the children." Miriam's gaze didn't waver. "Did you really? Or was it all for you? For your pride?" "Elias, we're not asking for wealth or comfort, we just want you to be here, to love us as we are. But I can't wait any longer for you to find your way. Not if it keeps breaking us." And with that, she turned and left, closing the door softly behind her. He watched her go, feeling hollow, yet too proud to follow. Since then, he had tried to rebuild what he'd lost, to change. But each attempt ended in failure, and each failure only deepened his shame and despair. He would feel remorse and pray for forgiveness, only to fall back into the same sins. He couldn't seem to break free, no matter how hard he tried. After everything had crumbled around him, Elias resolved to seek out the hidden garden whispered of in hushed tones, a sanctuary somewhere in the vast desert where weary souls might find rest and healing, a refuge that promised to lift the burdens of the past. Initially, the notion seemed absurd, even superstitious, a fleeting dream in the harsh reality of his life. Yet desperation has a way of altering one's perspective. With nothing left to lose, he embarked on his journey, clinging to the faint hope that he might uncover some semblance of peace amidst the desolation. But each time he thought about himself becoming a changed man, doubts clawed at him. Why would he, a man so broken and so prone to failure, ever deserve to find such a place? He was, after all, a sinner who had tried and failed countless times to change. The desert was his punishment, his fate, a prison he could never escape. Another mirage, he thought bitterly as he blinked through his sweat. Before him, the shifting sands coalesced into visions, scenes from his past, moments of weakness that reminded him of all the ways he'd fallen short. He saw himself giving into anger, treating others harshly, and watching his life spiral further out of control. He saw the faces of those he had wronged, the emptiness in his own eyes as he chased after things that never satisfied. The memories were vivid, as if they were happening again, trapping him in a cycle of despair. The desert seemed alive with his failures, each step weighed down by the sins he had never managed to leave behind. He fell to his knees, bitter and exhausted. Deep down, he wondered if this desert, this endless torment of his own making, was all he would ever know. And each time he tried to turn away, the visions pulled him back, whispering that he would never change, that he would never be worthy. On the brink of collapse, Elias stumbled across a parchment half buried in the sand. He fell to his knees and reached out to touch it. There was an inscription on its surface, worn but still readable. Squinting in the fading light, he read the words aloud. The former priests. existed in greater numbers because they were prevented by death from continuing, but Jesus, on the other hand, because he continues forever, holds his priesthood permanently. Therefore he is able also to save forever those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. As the words sank in, Elias felt an unfamiliar warmth growing in his chest, a flicker of hope that pierced through his despair. This passage spoke of something greater than his failures, something that transcended his repeated shortcomings. It spoke of Christ, unchanging, unending, and able to intercede eternally, even for a man as broken as he was. For the first time, he realized that the burden of reaching perfection, of becoming good enough, was not his to bear alone. In fact, he could never become the perfect man he had imagined in his mind, never rid himself entirely of his flaws or achieve a life free from stumbling. But that was not what Christ demanded of him. Where he was weak, Jesus was strong. Where he was fickle, Christ was constant. The relentless cycle of failure and self-recrimination was not his path to walk alone. Elias sank to his knees, his eyes filled with tears. What if, he thought, the best I can be is a servant of Christ's servants? He felt his pride slipping away, replaced by a profound sense of humility. He saw now that his purpose did not lie in attaining greatness or even conquering his sins through sheer willpower. Instead, his calling was to walk humbly, seeking not his own strength but Christ's. Even the smallest acts of love and service were meaningful when done in Christ's name. With trembling hands, he pressed his palm against the parchment, letting the truth sink deeply into his heart. The endless wandering, the striving to earn peace, the constant failure, all of it had obscured the truth that Christ's love was freely given, not earned. Christ's intercession was eternal, unfailing, independent of Elias's successes or failures. With renewed strength, Elias rose, and for the first time, he prayed with an honest heart, admitting his weaknesses and asking not for his own strength but for Christ's. He took a step forward, then another, leaning into this new hope, the words of the passage echoing in his mind. Hours passed as Elias trudged through the scorching desert, each step growing heavier with fatigue. Just when he thought he could go no further, he caught sight of tiny patches of green struggling to break through the relentless sand. They were faint and scattered, mere hints of life amidst the vast expanse of barren land. Then, something glimmered in the sand beside him. Curiosity piqued. He knelt and brushed away the grains, uncovering another parchment, its edges worn yet still intact. With shaking hands, he carefully unrolled it, eager for the insight it might offer. As he read the words inscribed upon it, he spoke them aloud. And do not go on presenting the parts of your body to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those who are alive from the dead, and your body's parts as instruments of righteousness for God. The verse struck him with profound clarity, resonating within him like a clarion call. In that moment, he grasped that he had a choice, a powerful choice to cease offering himself to the very sins that had ensnared him for so long. The parchment's message felt like an invitation, urging him to present himself to God, alive and renewed, ready for transformation. With the words echoing in his mind, Elias felt an unfamiliar strength rising within him, pushing back against the weight of his past. The realization dawned that true healing lay not in his own attempts to overcome sin, but in surrendering to the grace of God. Filled with renewed determination, he stood and glanced ahead. The distant patches of green seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, a promise of the lush garden that awaited him somewhere beyond the horizon, a sanctuary of redemption where he could finally rise from the ashes of his past and embrace a future filled with grace. As the words sank in, he felt a surge of determination. The garden echoed the promise of new life found in surrendering to God. Elias realized that this wasn't just a place of escape, it was a calling to transformation. In this moment, he understood that the path to healing lay not in striving to overcome his sins alone but in surrendering himself to Christ, allowing God to guide him toward righteousness. With renewed clarity, Elias stood and surveyed the beauty around him, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. For the first time, he felt hope blossom within him, as vibrant and resilient as the flowers surrounding him. This garden was not merely a refuge, it was a testament to the possibility of redemption, a living reminder that he could rise from the ashes of his past and embrace a future defined by grace. Elias knelt beside a small pool, gazing at his own reflection. Here, he felt a peace unlike anything he had ever known. The garden was a place of forgiveness, of second chances. As he prayed, he understood that he was not there because he had earned it. He was there because Christ had drawn him near, offering him a grace that was not bound by his failings. Rising to his feet, he felt the renewed sense of purpose. He knew he had to confront his past, to seek redemption not only for himself but also for those he had hurt, especially Miriam. With every step through the garden, he envisioned her weary eyes, the sadness etched in her face during their final moments together before he had left. He could still hear the echo of her voice, filled with hope and despair as she had pleaded for him to change. Determined, Elias made his way back through the vibrant foliage, feeling an urgency within him. He had wandered so far, but now it was time to return to the life he had abandoned. The weight of his past was still heavy on his shoulders, but he was no longer alone in carrying it. He felt a presence with him, guiding him, urging him to reach out to Miriam with honesty and humility. As he emerged from the garden and stepped back into the desert, the heat felt different, less oppressive, more bearable. The path back to his home seemed clearer, illuminated by the hope that had ignited within him. When he finally reached his doorstep, he hesitated for a moment, his heart racing. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she had moved on? But deep down, he knew he had to try. He knocked softly, the sound echoing in the stillness. The door opened, and there she stood, Miriam, her face a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight of him, the man who had hurt her so deeply yet now stood before her, transformed by the grace he had encountered. Miriam, he breathed, his voice thick with emotion, the weight of his journey evident in every word. I've come back. I know I've caused you so much pain, but I've changed. I've found a way to seek forgiveness and redemption, and I want to seek it with you. Tears glistened in her eyes as she studied his face, searching for a flicker of the man she once knew. Elias, do you truly mean that? She asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. You've hurt me more times than I can count. Why should I believe you now? I know, he replied, stepping closer, the distance between them a chasm of hurt and regret. I can't change the past, but I want to make amends. I want to walk this journey of healing with you, to seek God together and discover the life He has in store for us. But I understand if you're hesitant. I know I don't deserve your trust. Silence enveloped them, heavy with memories and unspoken words. Miriam's gaze fell to the ground, her heart wrestling with hope and doubt. Words mean little after everything you've done, she said, her voice quiet but firm. You've promised change before, and it always ended in disappointment. This time, it's going to take more than just words. I understand, he said, his heart sinking under the weight of her truth. I'm here for the long haul, no matter how long it takes. I will show you through my actions that I'm committed to this change. I know it won't be easy, and I don't expect forgiveness right away. Miriam regarded him with a cautious expression, her defenses still raised. If you're serious, then you need to prove it. Trust doesn't come back overnight, Elias. It will take time, and I need to see that you're truly different. Whatever it takes, he replied earnestly, desperation edging his voice. I'll work for it. I'll learn your trust, step by step, even if it feels impossible. As days turned into weeks, Elias devoted himself to proving his commitment to change. Each morning, he awoke with renewed determination, vowing to earn Miriam's trust one step at a time. Yet, with every effort came the weight of doubt. Was he truly capable of transforming his life? One afternoon, feeling the sting of frustration at his slow progress, he stumbled across a dusty parchment. Unrolling it, he read aloud the familiar words from James 2:18-19, but someone may well say, you have faith and I have works, show me your faith without the works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one. You do well, the demons also believe, and shudder. The truth of the passage pierced through his despair. He realized that faith without action was meaningless. If he wanted to show Miriam he had changed, he needed to put his faith into practice. He needed to do more than just talk about his intentions, he needed to serve others and demonstrate his renewed spirit through meaningful work. Eager to act, Elias began volunteering at a local shelter, helping those in need and offering his hands for labor wherever he could. One day, he met a widow named Eliza, whose small home had been damaged in a storm. Her situation struck a chord deep within him, mirroring his own feelings of brokenness and despair. Please, I can't afford the repairs, she wept, her voice trembling as she gestured to the crumbling walls of her home. I've lost so much already. I don't know what to do. Moved by her plight, Elias offered to help her rebuild. I have skills. I may not have much to give, but I can work, he said earnestly. Let me help you. Over the next few weeks, he poured his heart into the project, working tirelessly alongside Eliza. As they labored, he discovered the joy of selflessness and the fulfillment that came from serving others. Each nail he drove, each wall he painted, felt like a step toward redemption, not just for himself but for the widow who had become a source of inspiration. During this time, he also began to understand the depth of his faith. With each passing day, he would return home, exhausted but fulfilled. He would share the stories of his work with Miriam, explaining how each act of service brought him closer to God and to her, though she listened quietly, still guarded. After finishing Elias's home, the day of the unveiling arrived. He stepped back and admired the transformation, a sturdy, warm space that felt filled with hope. Elias's tears of gratitude were a testament to the power of compassion. "I can't thank you enough," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've given me more than a home, you've restored my faith in people." Elias smiled, but deep down, he knew he wasn't done. This was just the beginning of a journey toward restoration. As he left Elias's house that day, he felt a shift within himself. The echo of the scripture rang in his ears, reminding him that faith is revealed through action. When he returned home, he found Miriam waiting for him, her expression unreadable. "You look different," she said, curiosity mixing with caution. "I am different," he replied, standing before her, the sincerity in his eyes unwavering. "I've realized that my faith must be lived out through my actions. I've been working with a widow, helping her rebuild her home. I want to show you that I am committed to becoming a better man." As he spoke, he felt the weight of his past lingering, but the flicker of hope in his heart had grown brighter. He reached for her hand, his heart pounding. "I know I have to work for your trust. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." Miriam studied him, her heart caught between skepticism and a yearning for the man she once loved. "It won't be easy, Elias. I've been hurt too many times before. Trust isn't just given, it has to be earned." "I know," he said, a sense of determination washing over him. "I'm committed to this. I want to prove to you that I can be the man you deserve." As he spoke, something shifted in her expression. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the hesitation mixed with the slightest glimmer of hope. "Then let's take it one day at a time," she finally said, her voice steadier now. "Show me through your actions that you mean what you say." Elias nodded, a wave of gratitude flooding through him. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt the promise of redemption within reach. Together, they would walk this path, guided by faith and the determination to rebuild what had been lost, step by step, moment by moment. Epilogue. Elias emerged from the desert, a transformed man bearing the weight of both his past failures and newfound hope. The arid sands had mirrored his internal desolation, while the hidden garden revealed the promise of renewal and forgiveness through Christ. His journey illustrated the profound truth that, despite our struggles and imperfections, there exists a grace that transcends our shortcomings. As echoed in Hebrews 7:23-25, Christ's eternal priesthood offers a sanctuary for the weary, assuring us that his intercession is a steadfast anchor in our tumultuous lives. Furthermore, the call to present ourselves to God as instruments of righteousness, as expressed in Romans 6:13, reminds us that true transformation comes from surrendering our lives to his purpose. In James 2:18-19, we learn that faith must be accompanied by action, as Elias discovered through his commitment to service and love. This passage emphasizes that faith without works is dead, encouraging believers to live out their convictions through tangible expressions of compassion and humility. Elias's path underscores that redemption is not a destination reached through our own merit but a grace-filled journey made possible by the unwavering love of God. As he discovered, it is not by our own strength, but by the unending grace and faithfulness of Christ that we find redemption and peace, enabling us to rise from our past and embrace a future filled with hope.